I'll call tonight's City Council meeting to order. And Abby, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Roberts.
Here.
Councilmember Valento.
Here.
Councilmember Husnick.
Here.
Councilmember Erickson.
Here.
Mayor Bain.
Here. I'd like to invite everyone to rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council, we have an agenda before you. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? And our agenda is approved. Our next item this evening is open forum. Open forum is any interested party's opportunity to discuss any topic of their choosing. And do we have anyone signed up for open forum this evening? Anyone online for open forum this evening?
We have one participant online, WIK 19 and WIC 19. If you're here for open forum, would you please unmute yourself? Doesn't look like it.
Okay, very good. We will close open forum and bring meeting back to council. Council, tonight is our first meeting of the year. Happy New Year, everyone. And it's a highly administrative night with license renewals and a lot of administrative activity in our consent agenda. I'd like to recommend, actually, Councilmember Husnick's recommendation, which I think is great, that we take the consent agenda this evening in section. And so maybe we'll take consent by letter category, just giving opportunity for individuals to pull any items if they need to be pulled, or approve in mass as we do. So with that, I would move to approve consent agenda item 6A. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? 6A is approved. I would move that we approve 6B. Is there a second? We have a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? I would move that we approve consent agenda 6C. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? We have consent agenda item 6D. I would move that we approve consent of 6D. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? 6D is approved.
Looks like
I
your
just
number is-
realized we did 6D and that covers all of them. I will give a moment for review. Is everyone comfortable all the way through 6D? I should have done 1 through 4. Is everyone comfortable? No items needing to be discussed? Okay.
Mayor Bain, can I just note for the record for those, because we had a number of people come in during those approvals, those were all of our business permits, gambling permits, temporary liquor licenses, liquor license renewals, and tobacco license renewals were approved.
Thank you, Abby. All right, council, moving on to our regular agenda this evening, we do have, for first consideration, agenda item 7A, which is consideration of ordinance 733, which is our nuisance ordinance. And Amanda, I believe you're walking us through this?
Thank you, Your Honor. Council, so before you in your packet tonight is the final proposed ordinance that we have been working on for most of the year, and this covers nuisances, abatement, and code enforcement in general. I will walk through in some summary fashion the changes that we may have made, or just kind of reminders from our last work session. So we had a work session, I apologize, my memo said June, it was actually October 16th, work session where council literally walked through almost every word of this ordinance and gave staff some direction on modifications they wanted to see. All of those changes have been incorporated, and the ordinance that you have tonight is what you saw in October, and then the changes that were requested that evening. So the first thing is enforcement and inspections. This we are highlighting here for you is the enforcement officers, and I just want to take a second to clarify. Enforcement officers are the city staff who are tasked with enforcing or administering the code. So this is anything from your building official who goes to do inspections to, you know, somebody asks for a zoning letter, to all the zoning approvals, to literally everything that, you know, city staff does is administering or enforcing the code. This is just sort of highlighting that essentially the department heads of these areas are the kind of enforcement officer or the person who is tasked with administering or enforcing the code. This would also include like licensing, you know, so that would be the city clerk or whomever. That's different than a code enforcement officer, and that was the position that we kind of had kicked around potentially adding that for 2024, but potentially we'll now be doing in a later year. Likewise, this section talks about inspections of the buildings. So there's a lot of words in this section that talk about what, you know, that we have the right to do inspections. This again covers all different types of inspections. So your building inspector inspections, fire code inspections, nuisance certainly related, abatement related as well, utilities. Sometimes, although often, this is going to be covered by an easement that already exists on the property that we're entering. So we have express permission via that easement. But this just says that we do have the authority to go in and do these inspections. It's important to note, though, that these inspections do require property owner approval. So if a property owner were to say, get off my lawn or get out of my house, we don't have the right to continue to be there. If we wanted to continue to do some sort of inspection, we would need to get what's called an administrative warrant. So we would have to go before a judge and get approval to go back into the property. So then chapter 36 talks about administrative citations. If you'll recall, we started talking about these back last spring as an additional tool that the city could use for general code enforcement. So administrative citations are citations that can be issued for any violation of city code. Just to note, when we're talking about an administrative citation, that can be for any sort of code violation. That's different from abatement. Abatement is where we're going to fix a public nuisance. And that's just for public nuisances. We can't abate anything in the code. It would be something that we specifically designated as a public nuisance. Administrative citations are not criminal, so this isn't going on somebody's record. This isn't, you're not going before a judge. This is really just a fine, right, a fee. And it is effective. It can be an effective tool to gain code compliance. Generally speaking, we do have to send out essentially a warning letter or a compliance letter before we are to send out an administrative citation. There are exceptions to that. So if you're a repeat offender, if it's a license violation, so a business license violation, fire protection, animal violations, traffic, noise. So those types of violations that are kind of a one-off, you're not necessarily going to be able to, you know, if it's weeds, I'm going to tell you mow your weeds before I'm going to give you a citation. But if you have a very loud party, I'm not going to wait for a second party. You'll get cited at the first party. Failure to follow a stop work order, and then emergency situations. The code, importantly, does include an appeal procedure where somebody who receives an administrative citation may appeal that to an administrative law judge. And our citation amounts do vary. Those were established by the fee schedule that was passed at the last meeting, and those range from I think as little as like $20 to I think the most expensive one is $200, and that would be for, you know, more of your business-related citations or more serious violations. Chapter 96, this talked about nuisances, abatement, and enforcement. And just to be clear, what we did for these ordinances, there's obviously many, many pages of them, but we're doing what's called a repeal and replace. So everything in this proposed ordinance is going to look new, but in fact, some of the language currently exists in code and some of it is new. It's a combination of both. We did change the definition of a public nuisance just to mirror the state statute. We also broke down our public nuisances by type. So we have general public nuisances. Those are going to be things like animals, so a barking dog or something like that. Public nuisances obstructions, so those are going to be things like snow and ice removal, unlawful parking, and digging and adding fill in drainage ways. And then public nuisances affecting public health, so those will be things like accumulation of garbage, noxious weeds, and dumping toxic material into the sewer. We also talk about unsheltered storage in the public nuisance section, and so that is the language that you see for the general rule is sort of what we already have in the code. But as we met in October, we sought some guidance from council regarding not including agricultural areas and not including MXR1 areas that are also being used for ag. So we did include language that says you are, exempt from this ordinance, but you do still need to follow the rules regarding public health nuisances. And the purpose for that is so that if somebody, and I'll show you what I mean by that, if somebody has a bunch of stuff like this in their yard where it isn't really that you're storing stuff, it's that you probably have a vermin problem, you potentially have other issues that would affect public health, we can still manage that. This would be another example of what we mean by unsheltered storage. These are photos from places within the city. Then we talked about abandoned junk or unauthorized motor vehicles. And so these, the language is generally the same as what was in the original ordinance, and this prevents you from stashing a whole bunch of vehicles. And again, we have exceptions for, in this case, we have exceptions for the business district. Obviously, if your business requires you to have vehicles, that's different. And then again, if you're in the agricultural or MXR1 areas as well. These would be examples, photos of what we're talking about when we say unauthorized vehicles. And again, these are photos of places within the city. And then in addition, we also went through the building maintenance and appearance. So this was a section that we had talked about, kind of went back and forth. The council did in terms of if we even wanted to include this section or if we didn't. Ultimately decided that yes, we did, and we wanted to sort of have some general rules that we would allow staff to issue citations or do abatement for more kind of dilapidated houses. And so that this complies with what what council had requested of staff at that October meeting. And then this was sort of the example of what we were getting at. So obviously the exterior of this home is in pretty bad shape. And so that's the type of things that we were trying to get at with that code section. Then finally, we talked about abatement. And so abatement is the house cleaning services or basically cleaning up the public nuisances. And this allows the city to clean up or remove the public nuisances and then assess the property owner if, we would send them a bill. If they don't pay it by the end of the year, then that bill would be assessed to their taxes. This does require that we give the property owner notice and we give them reasonable time to complete that action. The exception for that is in emergency situations and snow and ice removal, because we have a short period of time between when we need to get that removed. As I mentioned, that we can assess the costs if it's unpaid. So that's a quick summary of the ordinance. If I'm available for questions, if you have general questions as you were reviewing it in preparation for this meeting. Otherwise, what I am looking for tonight is the requested council action below, which is a motion to approve ordinance number 733.
Let's just open it up. Council, what questions do you have for Amanda? Questions, comments? We can open it up all together.
Well, I guess one comment is, we talked about this quite a bit, is the fact that it's a complaint-based system, and that, so there's still some consideration for a person parking a boat, for instance, in their yard that's parked nice and neat and that kind of thing, and you see that in our city. And so we just want to make sure that if somebody does complain about something like that, and someone goes to take a look at it, they should be able to say, no, you're fine. You know what I mean? And so, just so that there's some consideration that way, you know? Otherwise, I can list a couple of examples why we need this. We don't have any teeth in our ordinance to help, so.
Councilmember Husnick brings up a question, that was one of the things I was looking for, and maybe I admit, outdoor boat storage is allowed because we aren't explicitly prohibiting it, right?
Correct.
So our ordinance is silent on boat storage or recreational vehicle, RV storage, is that?
Right, we had talked about in the auto vehicle section doing something, but, I mean, forget it, that's not gonna work in Forest Lake, when we're a boating community. And going back to Councilmember Husnick's point, yeah, this is totally complaint-based, so we are not out there, staff is not gonna be out there looking for things, and even when they get something, a complaint comes in, it will be vetted, and there are ones that will be responded to, a la the burnt-down house, a la some of the photos that you see here, and there will be ones that just are not going to rise to the level of, really it's triage mode, right? We're trying to find the worst offenders and deal with those.
Getting rid of that burned down house was a good thing.
Yeah,
They
I
really
think he
kinda-
was demoing it last week. He's done an amazing job.
Yeah, yeah,
I did not realize that had come down, that's nice, that's a
Yeah.
nice win.
it'll be a nice lot for somebody.
Very good. Other questions? I had a question that I had chatted with Amanda offline on, and it turned out what I was questioning has been in our code for a long time. So, again, if you look at many of these items, it's a matter of degree of compliance, and if we are taking this complaint-based approach and triaging and addressing the largest, I like having the standard out there that really gives us what's needed to take action. So overall, I'm really happy with what we've seen. Other points of feedback, question? Yeah, Councilmember
So
Roberts.
I unfortunately missed that workshop back on the 16th, so I wasn't able to go through with everyone, but I can respect what the feedback was and the changes that were made. I had some concerns as well with Amanda separately, and she addressed those. The one of stacking of wood
Yeah.
was seems a little bit overreaching, so I hope that is not something that's used on a regular basis. It has to be some kind of a situation where maybe the wood's sitting there for 3 years or something. I don't know, not stacked neatly.
Was there, on that particular one, was there any changes from our previous, or was it lifted entirely from what's been in code?
Firewoods was the same as what's currently in code.
Yeah. And still, somebody has to complain about it. I
Yeah,
mean, so-
and so I mentioned with Councilmember Roberts, I mentioned it's not super common to see firewood specifically being called out in other codes, other city codes, as part of outdoor storage. But that said, I do know that there have been a few cities where they've had, it's like there's firewood storage, and then it kind of turns into garbage storage, and then it kind of, and so sometimes it's just helpful to have words, so that way if you have somebody who's really difficult, you have sort of a couple different options where you can come at them with, and so sometimes I can see this being helpful where you would maybe use this probably more for one of those pictures that I just showed you where firewood is probably the least thing, but it just helps to it's firewood, it's this, it's that, you can kind of build a pretty strong argument about why, look, guy, you're a bit of a problem.
The other part on the complaint-based thing is just, I hope going forward that if it's a neighbor against a neighbor and they're nitpicking and just trying to be difficult, that the city sees that and can somehow take that in consideration as well.
Of course, absolutely.
Could I address that?
Yes, please.
On that note, yes, that is super important. I'm glad you brought that up. We are in the business of public nuisances, not private nuisances. So if we're talking about a situation where a neighbor is unhappy with the other neighbor, but it is not actually affecting, the public, we're out. We don't have the authority to do that, and obviously that's completely inappropriate use of city resources. So we wouldn't do that, and we'll be definitely mindful of that this next year.
Thank you for making that point. Any other questions or points of feedback on the ordinance? All right, I'll entertain a motion if anyone's ready.
I'll make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 733, the nuisance ordinance.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? And motion carries. Okay, our next item this evening, 7B, the encroachment agreement related to Outlot D and Forest Hills Farms First Edition in the city of Forest Lake.
That's me again. Okay, so in your packet is the encroachment agreement. When you approve the settlement agreement related to Forest Hills Farms and Lakeview Farms, I don't remember, I'm sorry, the meeting that we approved that escapes me, but I think it was in November. When you approve that, one of the documents in there, one of the agreements was that the council, or the city was going to provide an encroachment agreement for Forest Hills Farms to use a portion of Outlot D to store boat docks and to access their docks in the summertime. And so in your packet tonight is that encroachment agreement. It very clearly says that they have the right to use that property to do those things. It also says that we are not liable for damage to their stuff while it sits there. It does, this encroachment agreement does run with the land, meaning that it will, you know, if the association changes hands or whatever, they would continue to have the right to be able to use that area. Our Outlot D is quite a large area. It is not the entire Outlot D. It is the area of the Outlot D where that they had explicitly requested to be able to use, which is, if you look at the exhibit, it sort of shows a sketch of that portion. It's like the blue. It's page 103 of your packet. And so what I'm looking for tonight is just a motion to approve the encroachment agreement.
Thank you, Amanda. Any questions for Amanda before we consider a motion on this one? All right. I think this topic has been well vetted. I'm happy to see it coming even closer to conclusion tonight with the encroachment agreement. So with that, I'm happy to make a motion that we approve the encroachment agreement as presented in our packet. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Any abstentions?
Aye, abstention.
One abstention. All right. Motion carries. And we'll move on to 7C, which is the earned safe and sick time policy.
Yes, Mayor and City Council, as you may or may not know, the legislature passed a new law regarding sick time for employees of all businesses, basically. There have been no exceptions to who this applies to. What the new law covers is it covers all full-time, part-time, on-call, seasonal, temporary, whatever classification of employees that we have. And the law says that they are entitled to 1 hour of sick time for every 30 hours that they work. We have had extenuating discussions with the city's labor attorney. I've had a number of different training sessions and webinars regarding how to implement these regulations. It's a very complicated law, to be quite honest with you. However, in front of you today is two things. It's a revised sick time policy and then a new earned sick and safe leave time policy. The only change in the current sick time policy as far as the words go is we're striking out part-time employees that are not, it says you can't have sick time, or seasonal can't have sick time, so we have to change that. But the new law applies to all of our full-time, part-time, paid-on-call, seasonal, and temporary employees. So we have to now track their hours and give them sick time as per the statute. So this means Public Works who work in the summer, this means ice guards, this means everybody that works for us has to, will earn sick time. We had the choice of trying to modify our current policy for everyone. However, we chose to create a new policy for those part-time, seasonal, temporaries instead of modifying our regular sick time at this point. And why we did that? Well, our sick time policies and our union contracts are already meet the statutory requirements. So we didn't have to change those at all. They're well over earning more than 1 hour for every 30 hours worked. So they're in compliance. So it was better for us to clarify that and make a new policy to those other classifications of employees. The only difference when we created this new earned sick time policy is that the law changes how you can use sick time, and that's for everyone, and that's explained in the new policy. It expands the use of sick time for all the employees. So in the material tonight, it has a 3-page, 2-page, 3-page different things that you can use sick time for, and that was specifically outlined by the legislature. So mental health and domestic abuse and things like that are all included. It's really a vast expansion of what you can use sick time for. So before you is, again, the current sick time policy, but the more important is the earned and safe time policy, which provides the first 48 hours to, it provides sick time to all of our employees and explains what qualifies for sick time and associated things like that. One of the things that may come up in the next year, since this law is so vast and encompassing, we believe that there might be modifications in the future because it's really hard to understand and there's a lot of interpretation that'll have to go on. We also have 3 union contracts that are coming up for negotiation this year. It wouldn't surprise me if that was a subject of how the unions are interpreting this new law, and we may have to address that during the time of negotiations. I've already had contact by the unions asking for clarification, asking for how this works. We will leave that for negotiation. One of the things we will do, if you approve this, when you approve this, we have to present all our employees with the policy. We have to actually give them to that. So we have that prepared if you pass that tonight. So we will distribute that this week. The legislation became effective on January 1st. We're just a couple of days behind getting this in place, but again, it was such a complicated and such a, all the labor attorneys were really busy trying to come up with this thing, but we have no choice, is what the bottom line is. We have to do this. We have to, and fortunately, we have a good labor attorney. Our labor attorney was the one who made the model for the League of Cities, so it should be pretty good. It is pretty good, actually. It's all encompassing, but plain and simple, not simple, plain and straightforward. But we will keep you informed on if legislation changes, if interpretations change. The Department of Labor hasn't really weighed in on a lot on this. I'm sure they will. I'm sure there'll be a long, long sequence of complaints or modifications or clarifications coming. So, and as those come, we will be informed and may have to modify this policy again. So hopefully I haven't rambled too much or jumped around, but it's, again, we have no choice. We have to pass this. It's required. There is, unfortunately, there was no minimum number of employees that you could have. It starts with 1. So we have to pass it no matter what.
Is this something we really need to vote on? I mean, it's a state statute, so I'm a little confused on why.
You probably, I mean, we have our own policy, so it's going to be in our policy. So we should adopt it as an addition to our personnel policy.
I can understand that.
But to be honest with you, this follows the state statute. We have to follow the state statute. We have no choice on following the state statute. So all we're doing is amending our sick time policy so that we're in compliance and everyone understands that this is the new policy. Questions? I'm sorry if I didn't get that explained very well, but it's a massive change here.
Questions for Patrick?
No, just, I saw it in here, but just to confirm, these hours don't get paid out at the end of the year if they don't use them?
They do not for those new sick time employees, no.
Any other questions for Patrick? All right, not hearing any questions, entertain a motion if anyone's ready.
Well, if that's the case, I'll make a motion that we adopt the earned sick and safe leave time policy as presented by Patrick that is in line with the state statute.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any follow-up discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? And motion carries. Continuing on our kind of administrative portions of our agenda this evening, being our first meeting of the year. First up, acting mayor appointment. I would like to continue the tradition we've had on asking Councilmember Husnick to be our acting mayor. And therefore, I would propose and move that council approve Councilmember Husnick as acting mayor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose?
Abstain.
And one abstention. Very good. For discussion, I also have passed out to everybody at the dais our current council liaison appointment list. I did not make any changes to this. A couple of reasons for that. First discussion and good opportunity to see where everyone is at for current liaison appointments. My thought, unless I'm always happy to entertain suggestions or people would like to change seats, I'm always happy to entertain that. I feel like in this first year with this council, we've kind of got our feet underneath us. We've had a round of budget discussion. It's helpful to, from my experience, to see a second year and to see a cycle through before we change. So hence my preference to, unless there's a reason to move, I'd like to kind of keep things the same. But I'm open to discussion, and we don't need to take action on this tonight. If you want to have some additional discussion, if you want to chat with me offline, I'm happy to do that. Just wanted to put it out there tonight for introduction. The one thing that I would say after reflecting on where we are as a city, our current conversations around staffing, we have a staff review that is currently in process. I'd like to put a pause on the Personnel Committee and do so intentionally to just really say that anything that the Personnel Committee would have covered, I think for the near term needs to come to full council for full discussion. We had a little bit of the same discussion related to, we had a budget committee once upon a time ago, and it served its purpose for a period of time until we got to a spot where budget conversations were robust enough that everybody was at the table because they needed to be at the table. And so we've sunsetted the budget committee probably 2 to 3 years ago just because it wasn't being used, because again, every budget conversation came to the full council. I feel like we're in a little bit of that same situation related to the Personnel Committee. We've met once, I believe. And it was a good discussion, but I feel like we're in a different place related to just overall staffing. Staffing was a major part of our budget conversation this year. I expect as we're thinking about those positions, that's going to continue to be very intertwined, and I'd like them to be a full council. I'm not sure if this is a forever move, and so I'm saying let's just suspend and have an agreement that anything a Personnel Committee would have met on is really coming to full council. Maybe just a little bit more on Personnel Committee. It has been an ad hoc committee that really only has served, it only met ad hoc as needed, and as needed to talk about items that perhaps weren't maybe either pre-items coming to a full discussion. So for example, I believe our last meeting was primarily focused around the new positions that were proposed for budget, which then turned into a fair amount of council conversation on those positions. Or if there were a need for 2 members of council to get together on a quick basis to respond to something before we would have a council meeting. At this point, I think we're at a spot where we would bring that to a council meeting rather than use the Personnel Committee. But again, just a thought, I'm open to feedback. We can take action tonight. We could table it and give it some thought until our next meeting. I'm open to, again, feedback. So, thoughts?
That's fine.
Those look good.
Any reason to not move act forward tonight?
No.
No? Happy to entertain a motion if anyone would like. Also, I'm happy to table until our next meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the council liaison appointments as presented by Mayor Bain.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? And motion carries. Very good. Thank you, everyone. We do not have any discussion or workshop topics this evening. We are going to move into staff updates and then mayor and council updates prior to our closed sessions. And Abby, we'll start with you.
No update.
Patrick,
I have no updates.
Amanda.
Thank you, Your Honor. Council, just a quick update on the Lakeview Farms, Forest Hills Farms, just where we're at. By the end of this week, we should be completely done. The deeds have been signed. This encroachment agreement was the last piece. Tomorrow, my understanding is the association president is coming in to do her signing on everything, and then we're done.
Fantastic.
So hopefully it's done. That's it. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you, Amanda. Dave.
No updates.
Ryan.
Mayor, City Council, no updates unless you have any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. No. Captain Weiss.
I have nothing for council.
Very good. Thank you. Chief.
No updates.
Very good. Kevin.
One quick update, utility bills did get emailed out late on Friday last week, so residents who receive paperless invoices would be receiving those over the weekend, and files also sent to our printer, so those got mailed out today, so residents can expect to receive those bills in their mailbox probably later this week, and we just encourage them to call us on the number on their invoice if they have any questions.
Very good. Thank you, Kevin. Let's move to council updates. Councilmember Roberts.
Nothing tonight.
Councilmember Valento.
Nothing for me.
Councilmember Husnick.
Yes, I attended the EDA meeting tonight. We had a closed session on a subject that we need to let it go here for a while. That was pretty much the gist of the meeting. And then I also attended the school board meeting that took place last Thursday evening, and there they re-voted on who was going to be president, vice president, that kind of thing. And Rob Raphael now is the new president there. And also they go through all the reports, same as we do, and on their liaison reports and that kind of thing. And plus, they collected $34,800 in change from different donations. So that was really the highlight of the evening. Otherwise, normal stuff. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Erickson.
Couple questions. That fence that was damaged over the weekend due to a car accident, is that city-owned or is that gone on? That's all city-owned. So is that covered by
Is
insurance?
that back to standing up? It looked, I only got a quick glimpse of it, but it was in better condition than over the weekend when I saw it. Is it?
Yeah, we did a lot of repairs on it today. We have to take some apart and build some pieces back together and weld some plates back on, but by the end of the week, it should all be back to.
Cool. And then I noticed in the city bills we paid for the shoreline study or made a payment. What's the status? Is there a status update on that shoreline study?
Yeah, we do have recommendations from the consultant. We haven't brought them forth to the ED and the council because it does recommend the potential acquisition of private land, and both City Administrator Casey and I have been working to reach out to those private landowners before those documents would become public, at least as a heads up. Just thought that would be a good approach before we kind of throw some of those documents out in the public eye.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. No other updates.
Very good, thank you. Just a quick update, as Councilmember Husnick mentioned, we did have a closed session to consider sale of city property in the EDA meeting earlier tonight, and had a great discussion on that with some good follow-ups coming from staff. And I think that is about the extent of my updates this evening. Hope everyone had a fantastic new year and looking forward to a good 2024 ahead. We are going to move into two different closed sessions. I'm going to recommend, unless our city attorney tells me otherwise, that we move into the same set. We do one motion to move into closed sessions, and we will do sequential closed sessions in the Forest Lake room next door, and then come back into council chambers just to adjourn. And so with that, I would move that council move into two sequential closed sessions, the first being pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D05 Subdivision 3B for a confidential attorney-client discussion regarding threatened litigation regarding contract dispute with Taylor West contract for the downtown stormwater BMPs 0N1.126684, followed by a closed session pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 13D05 Subdivision 3A for the annual performance evaluation of City Administrator Patrick Casey. Is there a second to move into closed sessions? Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, and we're in closed sessions.